Today we're going to do Unit 28, Lesson 2 in the language program. We're going to start with phonemic awareness and phonics. Today we're going to learn a new pronunciation for the letter combinations DU and TU. Remember, U is often pronounced as in dust and tusk. However, there are other pronunciations for the letter U. When U follows D or T, it may be pronounced U or like a schwa sound. Turn to page 154 in your interactive text. Let's read these sounds together. Chew, cha, ju, ja. Our goal is to identify the sounds from the sound bank that match up with the underlined words down below. Let's look at our first column. Graduate, module, nodule. Graduate, module, nodule. Does it sound like chew, cha, ju, or ja? That's right. It sounds like Jew. You're going to write this down below in this column. Let's look at the second column. Educate, pendulum, fraudulent. Educate, pendulum, fraudulent. I hear a schwa sound in those words, and I also hear ja. Ja, educate, pendulum, fraudulent. So you're going to put this one in this column here. Now let's look at the third column. Statue, punctuate, virtual. Statue, punctuate, virtual. What sound do you hear the TU making? Statue, punctuate, virtual. Is it a chew or cha? That's right. If you said chew, then you are correct. You need to write this right here. And our last column. The TU letters. Century, fortunate, spatula. Century, fortunate, spatula. Is it chew, cha, ju, or ja? Century. That's right. It has a schwa. So you're going to put this right here. Nice work. Now we're going to move on to the second part of this lesson, which is spelling and word recognition. Our goal in this part is to spell high-frequency words in context. Look at the words here in the word bank. Our words are bought, caught, source, view, brought, and aunt, or some people say aunt. What you need to do is to put the words in alphabetical order and write them on the lines. Write one sentence for each essential word. Then check that each sentence uses sentence signals, correct capitalization, commas, and end punctuation. You can pause the video, do this, and come back to it. Today in step 3, our vocabulary section, we are going to use the meanings of prefixes, base words, roots, and suffixes to define words, and then use affixed words in context. Let's look at our brand new prefixes, roots, and suffixes. Our first one is anti or anti. It means opposite or against. The next one is fur. Fur is a root, and it means to bear or to carry. Tend, tends, or tent. Another root means to stretch or to strain. And the suffix al or all means relating to or characterized by. Please turn to your interactive text and do page 156. Read each sentence, choose the correct word to complete the sentence and write it in the blank. Circle each prefix and suffix and underline the root or base word in the selected word. Pause the video and do that now. Let's check your work. Number 1. In a cold winter, a car's radiator needs antifreeze to keep it functioning. Anti is the prefix in antifreeze. Antifreeze is a liquid that guards against freezing. Number 2. A person's license is not transferable to another person. Transferable has a prefix, trans, and a root for plus a suffix able. Transferable means able to be carried from one person to another. Number 3, the immigrant was able to extend her passport for another 5 years. Extend, letter A. The prefix in extend is ex, and the root is tend. Extend means to stretch out. Number 4, the father intended to move to the United States. Intended. Our prefix is in, our root is tend, and our suffix is ed. Intended means had in mind for the future. Number 5, after the long journey, the family's arrival in New York was very emotional. Letter C, emotional. Underline emotion and circle AL. Al is your suffix. Emotional means characterized by emotion. Let's start step 4, grammar and usage. Today our goal is to learn about relative pronouns and identify adjectival clauses in sentences. Listen as we review. Pronouns are function words that take the place of nouns. Nominative or subject pronouns take the place of the subject in a sentence. Object pronouns take the place of objects in a sentence. Possessive pronouns show ownership or possession. Most pronouns have antecedents, nouns to which they refer. Indefinite pronouns refer to unspecified or unknown people or things. They can function as nominative pronouns or object pronouns. Indefinite pronouns do not have antecedents. Relative pronouns are another type of pronoun. A relative pronoun is a pronoun that begins a dependent clause. A relative pronoun is related to a noun or pronoun that has already been mentioned in the independent clause. This noun or pronoun is its antecedent. That, which, who, whom, and whose are relative pronouns. Let's look at these sentences. The front of the eyeball has a hole that lets in light. Let's identify the independent clause in this sentence. The front of the eyeball has a hole that lets in light. Let's underline this independent clause here. Who or what is the subject, is the sentence talking about? We're talking about the front of the eyeball. And what does it do? It has a hole. That's our independent clause. Now, let's circle the relative pronoun. That. Good. That is our relative pronoun. It is a dependent clause that lets in light, and the antecedent is whole. Good. Helen Keller, who lost sight as a baby, was an amazing person. Helen Keller was an amazing person. That sentence is an independent clause. It has a subject, Helen Keller, was an amazing person, which is a predicate, and it can stand on its own. Our relative pronoun is who, and it is a dependent clause here, who lost sight as a baby. It wouldn't make sense if we tried to use that as a sentence in itself, who lost sight as a baby. We don't know. It relies on Helen Keller. So Helen Keller is our antecedent for this relative pronoun of who. Go to page 157 in your interactive text and listen to the directions. Read each sentence, underline the independent clause, identify the relative pronoun, and circle it. Draw an arrow from the relative pronoun to its antecedent. Let's do the first couple together. Number 1, a person whose eyesight is good is very fortunate. Our independent clause is a person is very fortunate. Our relative pronoun is whose. And the antecedent is person because we're talking about person. Number 2, the iris, which surrounds the pupil, acts like a curtain. Our independent clause is the iris acts like a curtain. Our relative pronoun is which. And which is talking about iris. Pause the video and do the next 3 by yourself. When you turn in your work for this lesson, I will check to see that you've done this correctly. Moving on, let's review. A clause is a group of words that contains a subject and a predicate. An independent clause has one subject and one predicate. It represents a complete thought. A dependent clause cannot stand by itself. It combines with an independent clause to create meaning. A dependent clause can function as an adverb. Such a clause is called an adverbial clause. It is introduced by a subordinating conjunction, such as or since. An adjectival clause is a dependent clause that modifies a noun or pronoun by telling which one or what kind. An adjectival clause is introduced by a relative pronoun, such as that, which, who, whom, and whose. Let's look at this sentence. Ansel Adams, who was a famous photographer, made extraordinary photos of American vistas. Let's identify the relative pronoun. Who? Who is our relative pronoun? And the antecedent is Ansel Adams. Our adjectival clause is this whole phrase here. Who was a famous photographer? Now, let's turn to page 157. Read each sentence, identify the relative pronoun and circle it. Underline the adjectival clause. Number 1, light is let into the eyeball by the pupil, which is at the front of the eyeball. A relative pronoun is which. And our adjectival clause is that whole phrase, which is at the front of the eyeball. I'd also like you to draw an arrow here. Light is let in by the pupil, which is at the front of the eyeball. We're talking about pupil. So draw an arrow to the antecedent. Number 2, the iris controls the amount of light that enters the eye. What is our relative pronoun here? That's right, that. Now, our adjectival clause is that enters the eye. And our antecedent, the iris controls the amount of light that enters the eye. We're talking about light here. Do the rest by yourself, and when you turn it in, I will check these as well. On page R33 in your interactive text, you'll see a passage fluency number 1. It's based on a selection from your textbook called A View of the Eye. What I'd like you to do is to record yourself reading this and then send it to me. Send me the audio file. You can do this on your phone and then upload it to Google Drive. Then just share that. For right now, let's read this together. Sometimes we call the eye an eyeball. It is a ball about 1 inch in diameter. Most of the ball is covered by a tough white bag called the sclera, or the white of the eye. At the front of the ball is a hole that lets in light. This hole is called the pupil and appears as a black dot in the middle of your eye. Like a window, your eye has a curtain to control the amount of light that enters it. The colored ring around the pupil acts like a curtain. It is called the iris. In dim light, the iris opens to let in more light, and in bright light, the iris closes to let in less light. The pupil is covered with a clear layer of skin called the cornea. Behind the cornea is a clear disc called the lens. The job of the lens and the cornea is to gather light and focus it on a spot at the back of the eye. This spot is called the retina. The retina is a special layer of cells about the size of a nickel. If you thought of the eye as a movie camera, the retina would be the film in the camera. When you take a picture with the camera, you must develop the film. To develop this film, the light focused onto the retina is changed into nerve impulses. These impulses are sent to the brain through the optic nerve. The brain then develops the impulses into visual images. For the remainder of this lesson, you're going to use your hardback textbook, page 94 and 95. First, look at the diagram on page 95. Read the captions and study it carefully. Then go to page 158 in your interactive text and do this independently. You're going to read the title of the diagram below and look at the picture. Read the sentences below the diagram. The sentences are not in the proper order. Then you're going to write the number of each step in the process of seeing. Use the information from the text, a view of the eye in the student text, as well as the numbers on the drawing to help you. Then what I'd like you to do is to read a view of the eye in your student's textbook. It should be on pages 94. Finally, I would like you to go into your interactive text and finish page 159 using a view of the eye in your student textbook to help you answer these questions. When you're all done, save your work and send it to me. Have a great day.